Hi, and welcome to part 8 of this PowerShell Universal dashboard series. So in the last video, we took a look at how to finally add our table into our GUI or web application with PowerShell Universal. And we've discovered a few caveats or gotchas with the table if you're just using the load parameter. We noticed that you can't really use the refresh button. You do have to use a external refresh button, which you will reload the data because it will just constantly spin into infinity. So today we're going to actually be taking a look at server-side processing tables. So we're going to recreate the table that we already have in a server-side example and show you the differences in both and show you that you can't just simply convert the one parameter over. It won't actually work. You actually have quite a bit of work to do to make a table a server-side processed table. So let's go ahead and let's actually tackle that right away. So let's just go to our code view here. So here we have our code and we have our code for our table. So what we're actually going to do is we are just going to copy our code from our last video here for our table. And all we're going to do is just change the ID here to table example to table example server side. And we're going to keep everything the same pretty much. The only thing that we're actually going to go ahead and do is just copy over this data here, what was inside of data, and we're going to actually go ahead and remove that. And let me actually just zoom in here so you guys can see a little bit more of what's going on. And we're going to change the data parameter to load data. And we're going to have to do a pair of curly brackets. So what I like to do is just hit enter here so we can start loading that in right away. So one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to paste in our data that we used to get, and we're going to assign that to a data variable here. Now, if we actually just save this as it is, what we're going to notice is if we go into our page here and refresh, we're going to see that we have a table with no data in it. And that's because we actually didn't put the data in the table. We assigned it to a variable in our load data parameter, but we didn't actually load the data into the page. Now, to actually do that, what we would need to do is do a data here. And then we're going to pipe that to out UD table data with a parameter of page. We can just put 0 for now. We're going to be actually modifying this very, very shortly. The total count, we're just going to put that to 0 for now. And then the properties here, we are going to go ahead and just put event data dot properties, and that should actually load in our table correctly, but it will still have a lot of things wrong with it. I just want to show you guys the most basic example of loading in our data. So here's our data. Now we're going to notice that the search here has a search 0 records. And if we do a search, nothing actually happens. We don't get any more limiting on our results here. And even if we use the filter where here we actually do see search 6 records, if we put admin here, it doesn't limit it. If we do test, it doesn't limit it, it doesn't filter, it doesn't do anything. And if we click on the sorting buttons here, they do nothing as well. So the table is seemingly useless here. And we can also see our total count because we put it as 0. We have 0 here as well. We're going to fix that. But these are all the different things that just changing from a data to load data, a lot of these things don't work by default. And that's where we need to actually add more code. So let's go back into our code here and let's actually start from scratch here. So what we're going to do is we could actually just remove the include in search options here at the top. We actually don't need to put these in here because we're going to be putting these in the code. We're still going to do the show filter and the include in export. We still do need these. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to remove that last line that we just inserted here, which is the data pipe to out table data. We're just going to remove that because we're actually going to be cleaning that up and making it a lot better. So once we actually have our data here, what we need to do is we need to start adding in all the different functionalities that we really want, like the search and the filter. So let's do the search and the filter first. And we'll make sure that the count and everything is proper. And then we're going to add in the sorting as well. So what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to go into a for each loop here. So for each filter in event data dot filter, or dot filters, sorry. And then a open and closing curly bracket. And then in here, we're going to do a data. So we're referencing our data variable from up here is going to be equal to data. Once again, we're referencing our variable. And here we're going to pipe that to a where object property filter.id. So a $ filter. So we're getting our filter from our for each loop. So we're going to be filtering on the specific property. And then we're going to do a dash match and dash value. And we're going to do a filter dot value. So it's going to get the value from the filter here. So all we're going to do is actually, we're just going to take just this for now. And we're going to do the search in just a moment. But first, let's actually just go ahead and let's output this data here. So the first thing that we really want to be able to get is to get a count. Now, one of the easiest way to do that, and this will actually have a problem, we're going to fix this, but we're going to actually encounter an issue on purpose here. So we're going to create a total count variable, and that is going to equal to data.count. All right. And then all we're going to do now is let's go to data equals data. And then we're going to go ahead and do a select object first dash first, and then we're going to put the event data dot page size. So it's just going to grab the exact amount of data that we need for our page. And then what we want to do is we want to skip the event data dot page times event data dot page size. Now what this is going to do, this is going to only load in the amount of data that our page size is set to in our event data. So that's actually in our GUI form. We're going to see that very shortly. And we are skipping the number of page that we're on times the event data page size. So if we're on the 5th page, it's actually going to skip the first 4 pages worth of data and only show us the 5th page worth of data here. So that's just what that does. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to do a data dash pipe to out UD table data. And then we're going to do a page is going to be event data dot page. Our total count is going to be our total count variable. And then our properties, we have already seen this, is going to be event data dot properties. All right, so this will actually have a slightly better result. Like I said, there's still going to be some problems here. All right, it's saved. Let's just go ahead and let's refresh our application here. So here's our application. As we can see, our total count is good. We have 6 people in our Active Directory right now, so that is perfectly fine. And if we do a page size, we can do 10. It changes to only 1 page. So this is our page size here, and we can see that we can go to the next page, and we can go to the previous page just fine. If we do a filter and we do test, we now only get our test employees. We can also do a filter on username. We can do employee and we get the filter there. But now if we try to do a filter on administrator, we get an error message, and we get the error message for the total count. And that is because, let's go back to our code and let's investigate why. That is because we're getting a data.count and it's only 1 data. So when we're actually doing this, it goes from being an array to being just a single object. So what I actually like to do before the total count here is I like to create just a temporary table here, or a temporary array. We're going to do temp equals an empty array, and then we're going to do temp plus equals data, and then the total count just equals the temp dot count. And now if we actually go ahead, we save this, we go back into our application here, we refresh because I don't know if it actually refreshed or not. If we type in admin now, we get our 1 administrator. We see that the total count is only 1, and we did not get the error message. So that's how to avoid that error message there. That's the best way that I have found to solve that. If your filter or your search, which we'll see how to implement the search in just a few moments here, that's the best way to avoid that. So right below our filters here, let me just zoom in, make sure you guys can see everything once again. We can just zoom out 1 here. All right, so now let's implement our search. So what we're going to say here is we're going to do an if statement, and we're going to do if event data dot search. So if we actually implement a search, we're going to be doing something. And then here we're going to say data equals data pipe where object once again. And then we're going to do a pair of curly brackets, and we're going to do a $__dot_name dash match event data dot search. And then we're going to do a space, and we're going to do a dash or, because remember that back in the original table, we had include in search for name, but we also had include in search for the username. So we're going to go ahead and do that as well. So we're going to do if the name matches, or the $_dot username dash match event data dot search. And then we're going to close the curly brackets. And then we can just close what we already have the other closing bracket here as well. So that should be fine. So now if we actually save this here, go ahead and minimize this code, and let's go back into our application, refresh the page. Now if we do our search up here and we type in admin, we only get our 1 administrator account. We type in employee here, we only get our 1 employee. And then we can even do a 3 here, and that will only get us our test employee 3. So you can do the search and the filter all at the same time. So that is very, very handy. All right, let's go back into our code here, because the last thing that we need to do, as we see, we don't have our refresh button. So we're going to make sure that our refresh button works. And then we also need to make sure that we have our ordering, because still right now I cannot order the data properly here. So let's go ahead, let's go back into our code, and let's actually do the Let's do the sorting first, and then we're going to take care of the refresh button. So what I like to do is I like to do the sorting after the count. Now you could do it before the count, that there is no real preference here. And then what we're going to say is we're going to do a if pair of parentheses not, and we're going to make sure that we type this variable as a string, and then we're going to do a is null or empty. So we're using a string function, and then we're going to be checking the event data dot order by dot field, and then we're going to put another pair of closing parentheses here, and then our open and closing curly bracket. So what this is basically saying is, as if the order by field is not empty, we're going to go into this statement. If we didn't have this not here, we would have to write an else, and we would have to put our code in the else statement, which doesn't really make sense for what we're doing. We want our code to somewhat be as simple as possible. So we're going to use the not at the beginning here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see whether or not it needs to be in a descending order. So what I like to do is create a variable called des, or you can name it descend. And we're going to make that equal to event data dot order direction space dash not equals, or NE, and then a set of single quotes ASC for ascending. So this is going to set it to descend equals true if the order direction is not equal to ascending, and it will set it to false if it is equal to ascending. Therefore, the descend will be false. So we're just setting whether or not it's descending or not. And then what we can actually do here is then do a data equals data, which we've seen a lot lately. And then we're going to pipe that to the sort object. And then we're going to sort it on the property. And we need to sort it on the property that's coming from the event data. So we're going to do event data dot order by dot field. So we're getting the field that we're ordering by. And then the descending colon, and here we're going to put our descend variable. So that's going to set it to either true or false on whether it's descending or not. That should be good. So let's go ahead and let's save that here. And let's go back to our application. Let's just refresh the page, make sure everything is working. And now if we do a sorting algorithm here, there it is. So now we can sort it by name. We can also sort it by username as well, or by employee ID. So all of those work very, very nicely. You can still do the search. You can still do the filter as well. So we can do admin, or we can do test here, or we can do even one better, do a test here. And then we can have a 3 here, which will limit it perfectly to that. All right, so now that we have all of those in there, the only thing that we have left to do is really see our export and see our refresh button. So let's go ahead and let's add our refresh button here. So in all of our options here of show search, show export, show filter, show pagination, show selection, we're just going to go here at the end and we're going to do a show refresh. We're going to add that back in because we took it out of our other table because we realized that it did not work. So once we have our show refresh here, we're going to save that. And let's go ahead. Let's go back in here. And we have our refresh button, so we can already see that it's there. And we can see when we click on it, we can see that it loads and then it quickly disappears. So we know that it's actually working. So let's go ahead and let's test it out here. So let's go into our Active Directory and let's just create a new user here. We're going to do test employee 4 here. We're just going to do the username as test emp4. We're just going to put a password here that I know will meet the requirements. All right, and once we click on finish, what we can do is we don't need to refresh the entire page. We can actually just go and click on this refresh button here. And there it is. We have 7 records now, and we can see our other table, which doesn't have that refresh button, has 6 records. And if we did click on this refresh button that we've coded, we can see the new employee. And here, what we can do is we can see the new employee on the second page. So that works fine. And since we copied over the table, we still have the row selection and it still works. So the row selection doesn't really change on server-side process tables, and neither does the export. So here we can actually click on the export. We're going to get all the same options. We can do export all as CSV. We open it up here. We can open up our CSV file. We get Notepad and we get the full data here. As long as you have your code in your columns here to include in export, even on server-side tables, you will still get that. It's not like the search. And even the filter, you still need the show filter in here for it to work here. You still need the show search for your search to work in your code as well. Of course, if you don't have those options, you don't really need them. But I always recommend at least having a search. It's really, really helpful. And again, if you have more properties here, you could always add more. So you can even do an or here once again and do a $_ dot employee ID dash match event data dot search. And we can hit save here. And we can minimize this. And now if we just look up 123, we get our employee ID. So that's perfectly fine. And then just to show you guys that if I didn't have that in there, it would not work. So let's just go ahead and let's remove that. And let's save that once again. And let's go back into our code here. If I did a 1, 2, 3, 4, we get nothing because I'm not searching on the employee ID field. So that could be something that's also very handy, is maybe just let your users know with a text to tell them what fields is searchable, or maybe only show fields that are searchable. That's really kind of up to you to decide what you really want to do with that. But that is the server-side tables. Now, as you saw, there is a lot more code into these. There are a lot of nice functionalities that you can do with this. So you can do some really, really neat stuff. But like I said, for the most part, if all you really want is a nice little refresh, you can easily just use a regular table with a button that will just redo your search. The nice thing about server-side tables is that you can do a refresh, keep all of your search filters, and everything just keeps it very nice. There's definitely some usages for server-side tables. It really just comes down to your use cases. And that is pretty much it. So we've covered tables. We've covered a lot of the GUI kind of applications that we would need, like buttons and changing a label, and then our table. So what we're going to be doing next is I'm going to be leaving it open to the comments to see what type of other features they would like to see a specific video on for the PowerShell Universal applications, or dashboards as they were known before. But we're actually going to move on into our project where we're going to be creating a tool for our help desk users or for our home labbers. It'll just give you a nice tool that you can quickly glance at your Active Directory, search for users, and see if a user is locked out or not, see if a user is enabled or not, and actually enable, disable users right from there, unlock them if you need to, if they're locked, and also reset their password if they need a password reset, which is a great tool for your help desk technicians to have, or if you're a home labber and just trying to build up a portfolio, it's going to be a very fun application and a very good application to have in your portfolio. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and also hit that like button and the notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out, because that's going to be the video that the project starts on. And then also you'll be notified when all future videos come out as well. It doesn't notify, however, I've noticed for the live streams. And just to let you guys know, the live streams are usually starting at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. It might be a few minutes early, a few minutes late, but we're usually there. We're usually there for about an hour or two, and that's where you're going to get kind of like some sneak peek into some content that will be coming to the channel where we're learning new technology. Oftentimes, chat can actually pick the technologies that we're learning. So that is very, very fun, and we just hang out. You can ask me any questions that you guys want for IT, PowerShell, anything like that. And it's just a nice camaraderie where everyone is learning at the same time. So it's very, very fun. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video.